Cool. Hello there. This is the white dog. Not very. Should we adjust stuff a little bit? Wednesday night live. Tutor talk. I'm just gonna get myself comfortable here. So Tutor talk. I'm trying to do every Wednesday evening. I'll get a live up so that everyone can see where it is, what we're going to talk about. You are more than welcome to join me. You're more than welcome to talk about things, disagree with things, tell me I'm talking utter rubbish, say white dog, what a load of old gumph, anything you like, if that's what you like. In Tutor Talk, I talk about things that I think are important. These are things, the kind of things that I discuss with my students on a fairly regular basis. In fact, this particular topic of conversation came about during a conversation I had with a student this week. So I thought, well, why not? Let's kick off our Wednesday night live here on the White Dog Music channel by talking about creativity. And more specifically, why it is that I don't use the term creativity at all in my playing, in my world, in my practice, any of that stuff. If I'm writing music, if I'm doing stuff, mixing, mastering, whatever it happens to be, I never use the word creative, because regardless of all of that kind of stuff, I simply don't consider myself a creative person. And that's kind of just the way it is, and I don't have a problem with that at all. And actually, I think neither should you. But let's kind of get onto that. So that little ditty that I plonked on is a little piece that I wrote, just a small little demo that I've been messing around with for a couple of days to illustrate a pedal that I'm working on for another set of videos for the YouTube channel here at White Dog Music. And I suppose we could kick off by saying, well, okay, White Dog, you have demonstrated a certain degree, if whatever, varying degrees, or a varying degree of creativity in terms of actually being able to put that thing together, right? Because it was an original thing. It's something that I created as such, and it's something that I worked on and have or will be putting out fairly shortly. You might see it here on the White Dog YouTube channel. Nevertheless, I would tell you and continue to contend that actually at no point during that or those efforts have I, or would I, think of myself as being creative or a creative person. And I will elaborate on this for you a little bit. So the first thing is I don't like the word creative. I don't like it when people refer to themselves as creative. I think that creative is a word that can only be applied to you by other people if they so choose. It's a bit like many other things out there. It's a kind of a moniker that I think people tend to take on for themselves sometimes, specifically within the entertainment, the arts, what would be considered the creative industries. I've worked within those creative industries, and I've worked in TV, and I've done various bits and pieces. And the people there refer to themselves very often as creatives or the talent. Again, it's very sort of what's the word? Presumptuous. Very, very presumptuous. Presumptuous of you to presume that you are either creative or talented. That really is, I think, for other people to decide, not you, for a start. So I don't like it when people refer to themselves as creative. I don't like it as a term. But I also, and I should say, I'm probably not talking so much about the fact that creativity is a psychological trait. Although, interestingly, even within psychology, definitions hugely vary, or can massively vary in terms of what different people think are sort of are creative traits, or what is creativity. So even there's not consensus in terms of what creativity actually is, and that's part of my problem, is that it's very difficult to talk about something that is quite so difficult to pin down. It's a very, very, very difficult concept to actually get a hold of and say, right, this is exactly what creativity is. And even within psychology, for example, you don't always find consensus in terms of what that is. So I'm not talking about the psychology side of things, the academic side of things so much. I am talking about your psychology, however, as a person, as a human being, which I presume you are, unless you're kind of listening from the planet Zog or something along those lines. I think part of, or a big part of the problem with terms like creativity for me is that when you are, excuse me, drop my pen. So when you are either, you can be deemed, or you can deem yourself to be creative or not creative. You can be deemed by other people to be creative or not creative. I think, especially as a younger, impressionable person, a young student, it would be quite easy to consider yourself not creative as such. And once you plant that flag, once you plant that idea, you could theoretically spend a lifetime thinking, oh, well, I can't do that. That's not something I'm able to do. And I think very, very often we can talk ourselves out of things actually that we are, a lot of us, not everyone, I'm not saying everyone, but many, many, many more people than possibly they realize are actually capable. And I think when we talk about creativity as such, if we're not really, really careful, we are in danger of excluding lots and lots and lots of the potential people, students, whoever it happens to be. And again, this isn't necessarily musical. I would take this attitude in absolutely anything that I do. I think we're in danger of removing people from the conversation about creativity. And the danger is then that people consider themselves to be non-creative over one incident, one comment, one thing. Those things that we experience, especially as younger, more impressionable people, humans, they live with us for lifetimes, and I think it's too easy to fall into the trap of feeling that you're not that thing, when actually you could very well be that thing. So I'd hate to think that was happening, and that's one of the reasons why I don't use the word creativity, and I won't use that word with my students, because I don't allow that to define them, if that makes sense. I also am highly dubious, as I said earlier on, about people who do use the term creative, because again, it's so difficult to actually pin down and pinpoint what they're talking about, really. And when you have a conversation with someone, it is important that you understand each other's points of reference. Otherwise, you can be using the same words but having two completely different conversations. You must have had that where you've spoken to someone and you think you've conveyed your idea pretty adequately to them, and they've gone off with a completely different idea. You can have two conversations with the same words quite comfortably, quite easily. We all take away the things that we want to take away from the conversations that we have. So I think that when someone considers themselves to be creative, as I said earlier on, I don't like that, because that's not for them to decide. And who is, after all, who is the arbiter of creativity? You're certainly not your own arbiter of creativity, that's for sure. You're not the arbiter in terms of I am creative or I'm not creative. No one gets to tell you that. I think that actually many of the things that are deemed and termed creative are actually just the logical conclusions of a number of processes or systems. So I don't like to use the word creative, and I don't consider myself creative. And I think what I would always encourage anyone to do, regardless of how they consider themselves, is I would encourage anyone to put those words and those terms aside and I would encourage them to just do. As a famous sports athletic footwear company, every other kind of wear would say, just do it. Just do it. Don't worry about whether you're creative or not. Whatever it is you want to do, just do it. And that's it. Just crack on with it. Get it underway. Put the processes in place that you need to put in place in order to achieve the thing that you want to achieve. And don't allow such banal terms as creativity hamper you or get in the way of what it is that you want to achieve or what it is you want to do. That's what I would say. And I would say if we all took that approach, then we would probably achieve a damn sight more. And then we wouldn't be left with people who consider themselves to be not kind of creative. So yeah, I mean, that's what I would kind of say about that. And that's one kind of the main reason why I don't like to use terms like that, because I think you can self-determine to a large degree. You can self-determine in terms of what you're going to achieve in that moment, what your plan is, what you're going to put in place in order to do those things. You can self-determine that. You don't need a fairly sort of worthless moniker like creativity telling you or giving you permission and saying to you, I can do X, or I can say, or I can do Y. I think what I would prefer to do certainly with my students, what I prefer to talk about is I prefer to talk about other kinds of traits. And the way I explain it is this: lose creativity, but replace it with a number of other traits. So replace your creativity with a really, really solid hard work ethic. That's going to pay you far more dividend than loitering under the assumption that you're in some way creative or not. Be hardworking, be industrious, be that kind of person who just puts that time aside to achieve the thing that they want to achieve and starts to achieve it. Even if you don't achieve it straight away, starts to achieve it. There's nothing creative about that. That's just hard work, and that's it. That has created that for you. I can't tell you how many times I've released my own albums. I've written albums. No, I'm not saying they were particularly good. The first one certainly wasn't. But they got a bit better as they went along, and I was certainly the most proud of my third album. And the character trait that I applied to that album in particular was just a whole bunch of hard work. So whereas 11 tracks ended up being on my third album, I think I wrote 35 or 40 songs. I wrote so much music that I was able to throw the not so good stuff away. I wrote so much music that I was able to ask other people their opinions, so that it wasn't a case of me just not being able to see the wood for the trees like I think I'd fallen into that trap a little bit, especially on my first album. So I made so many songs that I was able to offer up lists of songs, give 35, 40 songs to band members, friends, relatives, whatever else it happened to be. And I would take their opinions into kind of I wouldn't hold everything on them, but I would take them into account. And if everyone says, oh, that song, then the chances that's a better song, right? I mean, you can take some judgments away from this. And I only did that by working hard. I didn't do that by being creative. I only did that by being diligent, by having a ridiculous kind of work ethic, writing those songs for those 35, 40 songs for 12 hours a day during the period of time that I was kind of absolutely obsessed with kind of writing that album. So many, many, many things can be overcome with just a hard work ethic. a really, really good, solid work ethic. I think the other trait that I would say is incredibly important, and it ties into this really, is tenacity. The idea that you don't just give up. And again, I try to instill this in all of my students. We can make mistakes, we can not quite get things right, we can not quite achieve the goals and the ambitions that we set out to achieve. We rarely, if ever, anyone really, I certainly never achieve perfection per se, that's for sure. But what I don't do is I don't give up on the idea, unless it's a really, really bad idea, in which case you probably should give up. There's some psychological research that says that we actually do hold on to things for too long sometimes, which again you have to be aware of, right? It's a balancing act. But I think just tenacity, hard work, tenacity, that ability not to give up, that ability to write that extra song when really you'd rather be sat here on YouTube, the ability to do that extra thing, try that extra chord progression, whatever it happens to be, that extra design, it doesn't matter, whatever your thing is, to spend that bit of time doing that, just to see how it goes, that process of very much trying different things out. Don't give up if things don't work the way that you'd hope that they would. Conscientiousness, again, a psychological trait. Be conscientious about what you do. Just because you may or may not consider yourself a creative person, absolutely consider yourself a conscientious person. Roald Dahl, for example, the great book writer, BFG, James and the Giant Peach, the Twits, all that amazing stuff that I wrote, that I read as a youngster. Roald Dahl was, very, very well known for having quite a strict sort of schedule that he would keep to every day in terms of just sitting down and writing. I think maybe Tolkien was a bit the same as well, but Roald Dahl would sit down every day between 9 and 1:30, 2 p.m, something like that, and he would write. And he didn't worry whether what he was writing was good, bad. He didn't worry about things like creativity. He sat down and he conscientiously made a decision that was what he was going to do every day, and that he was going to do that work regardless of whether all of those pages, those manuscript pages, were thrown away at the end, or whether he hated all of it. It made no difference. He was going to sit down and he was going to write his 5, 10, 15, 20 pages of whatever he was working on at that given time. The end result of that hard work, that structure, putting that process in place and that conscientiousness, was that he became one of the great authors of all time. And he didn't worry about creativity, as I said. He just did it. And that's what I would say to you. If you've got to the end of this video with me kind of talking about this one word, and I spent 20 minutes just kind of talking about it, because I think it is really, really important. Don't think of yourself as creative. Don't worry about creativity. For me, creativity is the end result. I feel this way, won't I? If you look at creativity as, or your work, as being linear, the thing that is undoubtedly created, I'm not suggesting that we don't create. I'm talking about your approach to what you do. The thing that is created is absolutely the end result of your systems, your processes, your hard work, your tenacity, your conscientiousness. It's not a result of your innate creativity. It's not a result of whether or not you are considered, or you consider yourself to be, a creative person. And I think if we all kind of thought a little bit more like that, I think we'd get more done, probably. You'd write that book that you wanted to write, because you're not placing barriers in your way because you wake up one morning and, I don't feel very creative today. That doesn't matter. That's not there. So you can't feel that one way or another. You don't learn that instrument that you always wanted to learn because you don't consider yourself to be a creative person. You don't need to be a creative person to learn an instrument. There's a reason why there's many guitarists, pianists, drummers, all that kind of stuff. You can't write a song for love nor money. I'm not saying I can, by the way, but they're not always creative musicians in an all-round kind of scenario. And I can absolutely guarantee that those people who you consider to be kind of creative, those amazing artists, those people who just create huge volumes or amazing volumes of work or reach a standard of virtuosity in their playing or achieve and write great albums or great books, great works of fiction or non-fiction or that amazing sort of scientific discovery or whatever it happens to be. I can absolutely guarantee that basically that all amounted to hard work, conscientiousness, structure and processes, tenacity without a question, and that would have given you your end result, what it is that you wanted to. So there you go. What do you think? If you've got this far, fantastic. Feel free to leave comments or any of that kind of stuff. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Feel free to leave any kind of comments and things that you like. Feel free to subscribe if that's what you'd like to do. And feel free to join me next week when I will I will find something else. I think we'll do the word practice next week. We'll do why it is that I don't like to use, even though I'm using it now, context, you'll understand. Why I don't like to use the word practice. Let's do that one next week, and I'll see you same time, same place, next Wednesday evening. I'll even find my doofus if I can, Might need a pen. Same time next week, 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, and we'll have a good old chat. Bye-bye.